The first small feature of our app is gonna be board selection. Let's say you host a couple of climbing boards and want to share them with someone else. We can do it with a simple screen that looks like so. It consists of 3 main parts. First off, there is a top bar. It's got just the board's title for now. Down below, we've got the main content area and the list of all available boards. That can grow dynamically depending on how many of those we've got. And last but not least, we've got the bottom bar. It's just empty now, and later on will be used to keep our navigation elements there. Now let's jump to where we last left off. And just to let you know, I don't know how this can be done whatsoever, so you can expect a lot of googling, browsing, and head scratching here. First off, what draws my attention is this block in our entry point that's called scaffold. And the built-in documentation says it implements the material design layout. This logically leads us to Material 3, which is Google's open-source design system. And according to that, our app has 2 main parts in its layout: navigation and body. The navigation region, as the name suggests, helps a user to navigate between different app destinations. The body comprises the elements that make up the app content, such as buttons, text, images, whatever. And with the help of scaffold, we can easily implement the screen that looks like so, which nicely translates to our screen, doesn't it? The only confusing bit to me is this syntax, and the Kotlin documentation says that functions actually have a few pretty prominent features. First off, it's possible to give default values to function arguments, which is quite extensively used in scaffold. And moreover, some of the function arguments are functions too, which we can tell by this arrow pointing at the return type and having the list of arguments on the left, which makes up the function type syntax. Such arguments can also take so-called lambda functions, which are special kind of functions without a name and defined directly in place. And another important feature is that we can use a concise syntax to pass lambdas to functions. The usual way would be to put a lambda into parentheses as a function argument. And at the same time, if it's the last argument of that function, it can be put right after the function call. And this is exactly what scaffold does, because its last argument is a composable that defines the screen content, with some extra padding around. And now the content is a greeting message that we don't want to have here. Let's create our own content and keep it separate from all of this generated stuff. And as we found out last time, the best way to separate our code is to use packages, which are practically nothing but folders, isolating different bits of implementation. So we go to New, Package, and create a new one called UI Boards. And let's also create a Kotlin file called Boards. Here we'll be keeping our implementation, so let's start with a composable called Boards. Of course, we've got to make sure that we use the provided padding values. We simply pass it to the modifier like it's been done in the generated example. And we also add it to our preview. Let's go back to our screen. We're starting off with the content, and specifically the board card. In essence, it's a board image, its gem and name, and an icon. For simplicity, the image will be kept in resources, and by resource we mean an additional file that's shipped with our app. Such files are kept in a res folder, and more specifically in a subtype folder. For images, we use drawable. To import an image as a drawable resource, we go to Resource Manager, click plus, Import Drawables. Then we pick the right image, preview it, and job's a good one. Now let's find out how we load an image from a resource file. It's said to be done with an image composable. So we type in image, paint a resource, and select the one we've imported previously. There is also a description argument that can be set to null. Let's also create a preview. And seems to be fine. What comes next is positioning the elements. Compose got it all sorted and provides us with 3 main layout types. The column is used to lay out elements vertically, the row horizontally, and the box to put them on top of each other. We can also combine those to create a more complex layout. In our case, we've got one row, an image and an icon to the left and right respectively, and a middle column with 2 text elements. So let's add a row, put the image inside, and a column with 2 texts, one of which is a gem name, and the second being a board name. And let's see what we've got. Apparently nothing. Should we update or something? Nah, doesn't help. You know what? I'm a bit concerned about the image size because it's worryingly big. There must be a way to scale it down. And there is, with the content scale option and modifier. So let's reduce the size to something like 5480p, just a guess. And this definitely helps. The other thing is that we've got extra space on the size of the image, which is dictated by the default value of the content scale property. So let's set it to crop instead. And now it nicely fills the whole space. The other problem is that we see no text at all. The reason might be that we've got no background behind, and this is why the preview annotation has these background properties. So we can simply turn it on, and the text gets visible. Now we've got to make sure we're using right font sizes and correct spacing. The font size can be changed with the respective property. So let's go for 12 and 16. And now padding. Padding of each and every element can be controlled with a modifier, whereas to have extra space between the elements, we can use a spacer composable and tweak its padding. Now to the icon. If we revisit material, we'll see that it's got a pretty big icon catalog, and a quick search helps us to find the right icon straight away. So all we've got to do is just to probably type in icon, and there is a composable with such name. I'm wondering if there is something called icons. And there is. Play arrow seems to be the one we need, and we also have to pass that content description argument here, like for the image. Some extra spacing won't harm anyone, I believe. And now we have to center the text, which can be done with these layout properties. So to align row elements, we set vertical alignment to center vertically. We've also got to make sure that the icon snaps to the right, regardless of the card size. Let's quickly resize the whole card and see if it's true or not. And it's not. Then we can probably put it into a column and align to the end. And it's not moving anywhere. And it's kind of weird that when we click on the icon it doesn't jump to the column definition, which actually gives us a clue that the column is way too small and we can't simply click on it. And according to the docs, we can use max width property to make sure that the column occupies as much of the row space as possible. So let's give it a try. And now we can clearly see the column and the icon aligned to the right of that column. And as the card grows, the icon always sticks to the right. But the closer look at the icon tells that it doesn't seem to be quite right. And indeed, the icon package we use doesn't have the icon we need, as well as loads of other icons, which belong to the extended icon package. That seems to be way too big for the normal use, so the optimal solution is to download the missing icon. And then we can go back to our resource manager and import the icon like we've done with the image. So now it can be loaded as a separate drawable resource. Looks better, doesn't it? Now it's time to think of how we can render a list of cards. For that, Compose got scrollable layouts, such as lazy rows and columns. Let's create a new composable first to make it nice and neat. Now it's going to be called board card, and the new one we'll call board screen. To add a new entry to a lazy column, we use an item keyword and simply put any element inside of that item. For example, a board card. Let's copy and paste it so we've got multiple boards on the list. Now we've got to have two previews. One for the card and another for the screen. Now let's put it inside of the app scaffold and check it out in the app preview. Well, looks more like a screen now, right? We forgot about the inner padding again. So let's go back to the screen and add a modifier. Now we can pass the inner padding to that of the modifier. Let's talk about the top bar. We can make use of the existing ones, and there is quite a few. The one we need is called center aligned. There is an example down below that we are going to be using, and all it tells us to do is to create a new center aligned top bar and assign it to the respective scaffold property. And as it's a function, we've got to put it inside of a lambda block, and we need it to be white. It's pretty much the same with the bottom bar. We just use an existing one and also fill it with the white color. Let's also set content padding to get closer to our reference design. Now it's nicely spaced from all four edges. The card color has to also be white, and this seemingly trivial task has taken me quite a fair bit of time. After all Googling attempts failed to find something meaningful, the solution was found right in the project itself. We already know that all scaffold elements have their own color, right? And a quick peek inside lands us on the composable called surface, which is apparently nothing but a shape filled with a color. So why don't we just put the whole card inside of this surface? Then move the row modifier here because now it's the root component, and finally select the needed color, which gives us the desired result. We seem to have messed up the card padding along the way though, so let's bring it back. We put a separate modifier in the row with the right padding values. And we've got it back. Great. Let's also clean it up here a little. We've put a lot of implementation details inside of the preview, which is definitely not right, so let's fix this quickly. And let's actually do the following. We'll create a new file where we will define our own entry point called sprayer app. Let's copy the whole preview there and put the scaffold inside of the entry point. And in the preview we call this entry point. And now the same entry point can be reused in the main activity. And this is our first screen, which is pretty close to the reference design, isn't it? Hope you guys enjoyed the implementation process. All the code is available for you on GitHub, there is a link in the description, go and check this out. And next time we're gonna be having a closer look at theming in Compose, which is all about colors, types, and fancy stuff. So don't forget to tune in to the next one, and see you there!